Hey there everyone, I'm Lupin. This is Lupin's Langs. Do I need to change that? The alliteration makes it sound suspiciously like Conlang critic. Let's get into this. Since this is my first video, I want to talk about something kind of broad. So let's start with a very specific topic that affects few people in the overall scheme of things. Gendered language. There are a few things that led to me making this video, but let's start with the most obvious and what I should probably cover first. I don't adhere to traditional gender norms. I'm non-binary. Well, that puts me in an interesting position to talk gendered language. With my history of continuing projects, it seems likely that I'll be that one weird dude, chick, person without a linguistics degree that made one video and disappeared. Look at this, 45 seconds into a video on gendered language and I can't figure out what derogatory term to call myself that fits within YouTube's content guidelines. Back to the point, I'm a native English speaker, and the best alternative we have that's considered acceptable to the standard gendered he/she pronouns is singular they. For me, that works. The other main reason I'm making this video is, well, I'm sad to admit it, but I've been learning Esperanto on Duolingo. Mi estás comenzando sed... Yeah, let's not do that. Esperanto has been covered a lot in the linguistics community on the internet. Jan Meiseli is the one who spurred the idea in me to learn it, and he mentions right off the bat that Esperanto's gender issues have been covered countless times before. I understand not wanting to cover something that has already been talked to death from his perspective, but as a younger conlanger and someone who is non-binary, I want to put my own opinion out there on how languages, especially constructed languages, are inherently gendered most of the time. First, let's talk about the two languages I'm familiar with, English and German. As mentioned a paragraph ago, I'm a native English speaker. I live in the US, so of course I am. At the time I'm writing the script for this video, I'm starting my 4th year of school-setting German education. I'm not an expert or even an intermediate by any means, but 3 full years of Deutschklasse is enough to talk about grammatical gender. English fares the better out of the two natural languages I'm familiar with when it comes to representing non-gender specific people like me. Admittedly, the solutions we have are still sloppy. Singular they has had a tough time finding their footing. I can attest firsthand that the first thing that comes out of some people's mouths when you introduce yourself using they-them pronouns is, so what, you're several people? Well, hey, in German that could almost be the case, right? German uses sie for her, they, and the formal variation of you, so even if people are still calling me she, I can just doop-de-doop my itty-bitty little thought process over to, it's the same word, so it's all good in the end. Clearly, I'm bitter about this. As far as I know, there's no good way to talk about someone using gender-neutral terms in German, despite there being a grammatical neutral gender. If it was me, which it definitely isn't, I'd probably derive a gender-neutral pronoun from the existing neutral the. Er pairs with der, sie with die, so as with das. The non-binary wiki suggests using this one as a variation on es, which is it. Sure, it is technically a gender-neutral third-person pronoun, but that's the pronoun English speakers call inanimate objects and animals they don't particularly like. The wiki also suggests alternating sie and er, which I find incredibly clunky. So, no good solutions. But what if we introduced constructed pronouns? As you can hopefully tell from the aggressive sarcasm, I'm mostly against constructed pronouns. Tom Scott has a video that covers this in a much more professional sense, but I want to lay my opinion bare. Constructed gender-neutral pronouns aren't going to work. Getting people to use singular they is already a struggle that would be amplified exponentially by trying to convince people that Caesar, or Caesar, however you spell it, is really the pronoun that you want to be called by. I understand the non-binary people who use Caesar, but those pronouns are unsuited for me. I don't want any more flack in my right-leaning school than I already get. So far, it seems like natural languages aren't the answer. As a massive nerd, this is where I turn to Conlangs. Esperanto doesn't fare well on the does it have a gender-neutral pronoun test. Esperanto only has the two standard general pronouns, li for he and she for she. Well, hey, Esperanto doesn't have any grammatical gender, so at least it's got that going for it. Right? Not really. Everything in Esperanto is very explicitly gendered, even if it's not a grammatical feature. Most words where you're mentioning the gender of someone treats a male as the default. With my limited experience from Duolingo, let's talk about a specific case that makes it really clear Esperanto doesn't care about neutral gender. So, in Esperanto, the word for father is patro, and the word for mother is patrino. We're off to a bad start. But hey, Esperanto has a word for parent. That should be gender neutral. It's gepatro. very clearly derived from the male variation, just like Patrino is, so that's no help. I'm not familiar with Esperanto or the Esperantist community at large to tell if this trend continues in other words, where gender-neutral words are derived from only the male form. Side note, Gepatro weirds me out for an additional reason. Esperanto uses a few German structures and words here and there, like nur for only, and German past tense verbs get that ge prefix. So my gut reaction to Gepatro is, wait, to have fathered? Klingon and Sindarin do fare a lot better. Both have a single third-person pronoun with no gender distinction. This is nice. Guess I should be learning those to communicate instead of English. I will say, however, the documentation I found for these conlangs doesn't list their singular third-person pronouns as they. They generally list them as he, she. Gross. Digging into Klingon a little bit more shows that it has a word for he, she, and a word for they, which seems to be non-Klingon sentient. Someone with better Klingon knowledge can correct me, but it seems to me that there's still a divide in Klingon between people, he, she, and others, they, it. Definitely a problem in my book. Sindarin is good, though. It only distinguishes animate and inanimate, meaning singular they fits snugly into place with he and she in the animate third person. And just for Jan Measly, Tokipona also has a gender-neutral third-person pronoun, but Tokipona.net lists it as he, she, it, which again lumps non-binary people into this sort of other category. I'd love to talk about some other conlangs, maybe some community-driven ones, but I've been unable to find documentation for languages like Owa that I'd really like to talk gender in. There's my little rant about non-binary representation in the conlanging community, something that probably only affects me. Let's be honest, the people who are learning Klingon are learning it for conventions, not because they want a language that puts all people, no matter their gender, in the same category. This is the end card. Next time we'll be talking about false cognates, specifically ones that I'm familiar with in English and German. It'll also give me the chance to talk about one of my conlangs, which is based on a book series that we'll talk about next time. It's got a couple of false cognates that I find pretty interesting to talk about.